Hello class. I don't feel like this will be a long video. In fact, I probably could have made it into just a simple handout, but I want to talk to you about a few questions in this application process. I'm gonna give you 4 questions to consider for interpretation and 4 questions to consider for application. And what I want you to learn is that the more I ask questions, the more I understand the text, the more I can better apply it to myself. So I don't think these will need a lot of explanation. I think some of them are just, once you hear them, you go, yeah, that makes sense. So let me give you 4 questions to ask in the interpretive process, and then 4 questions in the application. So interpretation, here's some questions I would ask as I'm working through a text. Number 1, what can I learn about God in this passage? What does this passage teach me about God? Or to say it another way, what does this passage teach me about Christ? If you remember, Jesus in the book of John told the religious leaders of his day, John chapter 5, search the scriptures, for in them you think ye have life, and these are they which testify of me. Again, in Luke 24, after the resurrection on the Emmaus Road, beginning at Moses and the law and the prophets, he expounded unto them all the scriptures concerning himself. So one of the questions we should ask as we're going through the Bible is, does this talk about Christ? How do I get to Christ from this passage? Or what do I want about God in this passage? I believe it was Spurgeon. It could have been Moody. One of those men said, whenever I preach, I'm in my text and I make the quickest beeline to the cross that I can. In other words, in the words of Graham Scroggie, cut the Bible anywhere and it bleeds. And so the thought is, question number 1, how does this help me learn about Christ? How does it help me learn about God? Question number 2, what can I learn about people? Now that's helpful because the ministry is people. And so wherever I can learn about people, how they respond, how they behave, what are the things we can learn from them, the more I learn about those people dynamics, then the better off I am at trying to understand myself, them, and how I can interact as a better leader in ministry. Number 3, what can I learn about how I relate to God? Not just about God theologically or his attributes, but how can I relate to him? What can I do as a Christian leader to better relate to the Creator? What does this passage teach me about that? And then fourthly, what can I learn about relating to others? So really it's God and people. What do I want about them? What do I want about him? How do I relate to them? How do I relate to him? Those 4 questions. All right, now I've asked those 4 questions, and once I've asked them, I need to think about some questions in the application realm. And again, 4 simple questions. Number 1, what does God want me to understand or think about in this passage? What has he revealed in this text that he wants me to understand, or maybe there's a certain way he wants me to think? What does he want me to think? What does he want me to understand? The goal of education is to develop the mind of Christ. And in developing the mind of Christ, we're going to use the Bible. So what does he want me to think? How am I to transform my thinking, my understanding? Number 2, what does he want me to believe about himself, about me, about my future, about his love? What does he want me to believe? What's the doctrinal teaching of this passage? Or what's the dynamic truth from this passage that he wants to make sure I believe it? What does he want me to think? What does he want me to believe? Thirdly, what does he want me to desire? Is there a passage, is there an element in the passage that's not aiming at my head, but it's aiming at my heart? It's not, hey, what do I want you to think, and therefore change your belief. Now it's, what do I want you to desire? Now we're dealing with a heart issue. What in this passage should affect my heart, my desires, my affections? I'm not to set them on earthly things, I'm going to set them in heaven. So in this passage, what directs to my heart, my desires? And then fourthly, what does God want me to do? So what does he want me to think? That's my head. What does he want me to believe? That's still part of my head. He's changing my thinking and therefore changing what I believe. What does he want me to desire? That's my heart. What does he want me to do? Well, then that's my hands. And so what do I do from this passage? Is there a specific instruction for me to walk away with? There's a lot of different ways to ask these questions. My point is to try to get you in the habit of asking the questions. Here's what I believe. I really believe this. If you learn to ask the right questions, Bible study is a lot easier. Many times it's not, I didn't see that, it's, I didn't think to ask that. And so here's some questions to sort of help guide that as you develop the habit, as you develop the tool and the skill, because remember, hermeneutics is an art, but it's also a science. So there's a science. I've got the rules to follow, but there's the art. I've got to practice. And so as I'm working on these thoughts, hopefully this quick lecture give you some more food for thought in the area of application. Okay, see you in the next lecture.